I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Historical Preservation Board on Wednesday, September 28th, 2016 at 6:30 p.m. Could we have roll call, please?
All right. Board Member Clute?
Here.
Board Member Price?
Here.
Board Member Field?
Here.
Board Member Spratland?
Here.
Okay. And we have some absent people tonight. Board Members Grove, Gar, and Miller. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. Are there any changes to the agenda? Could I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
I'll second. Thank you. Everybody's in favor, right? The minutes to be approved. Everybody has read those. Are there any questions on the minutes from our last meeting? If not, could we have a motion to approve the minutes? This is the minutes of the July 18th meeting.
So moved. Thanks. I move to approve, based on the recording secretary's certification, the July 18th, 2016 video and the written minutes attached as Exhibit A as the minutes for the July 18th, 2016 regular meeting of the Historical Preservation Board. Second?
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. Public comment, there won't be any public comment because there is no general business, so we have no general business tonight. Okay, the public hearing. I will open the public hearing for the policy question. Does the proposed project, which includes alterations to the roof and to the south and west facades of the Summers Oil Service Station at 2299 West Main Street, meet the criteria for Certificate of Historic Appropriateness? Dennis, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you, Marty. This is a Certificate of Historic Appropriateness application for the Summers Oil Service Station, which is proposed to be Columbine on Main, and you probably have seen some of the work underway at this point. Policy question before you tonight is, does the proposed project, which includes alterations to the roof and to the south and west facades, the Summers Oil Service Station at 2299 West Main Street, meet the criteria for a Certificate of Historic Appropriateness? The Summers Oil Service Station was one of the original properties in the Main Street Historic District and is considered to be a contributing property within the district. That means basically it was present within the period of significance, and it possesses sufficient integrity to convey its history. The Columbine Country Club has leased the Summers Oil Service Station building as a temporary off-site dining facility while the clubhouse is being rebuilt. Until now, the building has not contained a full commercial kitchen, necessitating a major remodel of the building. Initially, it was thought that the proposed renovation would not have a significant impact on the exterior of the building and that the renovation could be accommodated with staff-level COA. However, as construction progressed, the extent of exterior alterations became apparent, and the applicant applied for a board-level COA, which is what you have before you tonight. That includes changes to the exterior, such as the addition of HVAC and other rooftop equipment, the relocation of the gas lines on the west side of the building, and a refashioning of the patio bar. The criteria for approving a COA, the first one of those four, is historic features. The work would not detrimentally alter, destroy, or adversely affect any architectural or landscape feature which contributes to its original historic designation. And we believe that with the original building footprint and structure remaining intact, that criterion is met. We also believe that using colors and roofing materials that match the existing structure appears to minimize the projections of the roof-mounted kitchen-related equipment. Number two, design guideline is otherwise in conformance with any applicable adopted design guidelines. And because this is a contributing structure in downtown, we follow under the historic design guidelines rather than the more general downtown-wide design guidelines. On page 44 of those, guideline 3.27 states preserve the original roof form of a historic structure. Page 53, the lead paragraph says, an addition should not detract from one's ability to interpret its historic character. And page 53, guideline 3.54 says, minimize the visual impacts of rooftop devices. We believe, again, that the original structure is intact. We believe that you can still see that general form, and that with the mitigating efforts that they're going to be making and have made to date, that we will be minimizing those visual impacts and we'll still be able to recognize the structure. And at some point, what they are adding, the HVAC equipment, could be removed from the building and the building would still be intact. Number 3, property compatibility. Proposed work is visually compatible with designated historic structures on the property. On page 44, guideline 3.27 says, preserve the original roof form of a historic structure. There are no other historic structures on the property, there's just this one. But we do believe that the applicant's proposing screening and painting the rooftop equipment, and that will minimize the impact. The footprint and roof remain intact, the equipment could be removed and the roof returned to its original condition. So basically the same criteria as we had under the the second compatibility criteria, excuse me. And the third one is district compatibility. Similar, only this time we're looking not just at buildings on that site, but also within the adjoining property within the district itself, and we have the same concept with that. We believe that the applicant is proposing screening and painting rooftop equipment, and it'll minimize its impact. And what you have to the west of you, of course, is Littletown. What you have to the south of you is Biga Park and also the Littleton Apartments. And the only building that's actually historic is immediately to the north of you, which is Ned Kelly's. Staff recommendation, based on our evaluation of the criteria, is that we recommend approval of the COA for the Summers Oil Service Station, conditional upon the applicant following the recommendations of the staff and board for minimizing visual impacts of the changes to the exterior of the building. Some photographs that you have in your packets. This is the way it looks today, and what we're proposing is screening, which is basically a secondary parapet which would screen this material. And what we have here is a large vent that's on top of this box. And so we're looking at painting this to be the same color as the roof. And then it's limited as what we can actually do in terms of screening this vent because the vent needs airflow. And so we're not sure how much can be done with that. It's possible we could do part of that. Steve Hinckley, who is the Chief Building Inspector, is here and officer, and could answer some of those questions if you have any questions about that. But primarily the equipment on the flat side of the roof is the stuff that we're looking at building a wall screen around. But you can kind of see that there's quite a bit of equipment that's here. This is the existing parapet. And we originally thought that with the drawings we were looking at, what was originally proposed, that that would be covering up most of that equipment. But as it turned out, the equipment was larger, and they ended up getting in some situations that we weren't anticipating and they weren't anticipating, and so we need to come back. So this is the kind of screening we're looking at, and they can talk more about that. The applicant is here, and we'll be happy to give more details about that. This is the bar that we have mentioned, and the garage door is still intact. It's behind the bar. They've moved it out, and so there is a potential that if it's a concern to you, that actually that could be moved back into the bar itself. But the actual bar structure is there. The door is intact as well. And again, here we are with the new vent that's up on top of the box. And again, we've got some limitations in terms of how much we can actually screen that and make the kitchen actually work. So with that, any questions in terms of the application itself before we turn it over to the applicant?
I have a question, Dennis, and
Okay.
I know the COA mentioned upgrading the exterior bar and countertop and also added new signage, but there wasn't anything in the motion about those two. Are those things that we're also considering?
The signage, we don't need to. We actually decided that was at a level we could actually do that as a staff level rather than having
Okay.
the board do that. So.
And what about the bar?
The bar, I think, is something that we need to have you consider as well. So, and we didn't know that was happening initially, but that is something you should be thinking about too. So,
Okay, so that's something we need to discuss and add
Right.
to the motion. Okay.
okay. Other questions?
Dennis, has the equipment already been installed?
The equipment has been installed. I don't know if there's anything left. You can ask either Connor or Michael if there's more. I think everything's in place at this point except for the screening.
And is it designed to be permanent or temporary, since Columbine is only going to be occupying?
It's designed to
the
be
building for a while?
permanent, so it's a permanent, permanent improvement to the building. So we will continue after they leave. As I understand it, the interior fixtures they'll be taking, but I believe they're retaining all the equipment. You can ask them more about that as well, if they're taking anything with them. They did bring some things over, or were at least intending to initially. I don't know if they ended up being able to do that or not. Bring some of the kitchen equipment over from the existing, the former clubs. It's now demolished.
So we're just being asked to review what the screening would look like?
Pretty much what the screening is, you think that does it, and also what you think should be done with the bar. But it's primarily the screening, and also if you think that, what colors it need to be. And we also talked about the gas line on the west side, and what do we need to do with that too. They painted the same color as, they had to move the gas line that's on the west wall. They painted the same color as the wall. I think it works pretty well. So those are the primary things we need to think about.
Any other questions for Dennis right now?
Kim?
Not for Dennis.
You look like you have a question. Okay, not yet? Okay. Okay.
I have one other, Dennis. When the original design of the service station had a covered porch with columns, so where you could actually drive through, I assume, in
Correct.
1929. And when were those walls filled in, do you know?
No, I don't know. Cal may know, but they added the two bays to the east. They added the initial bay, the closest one to the original building, then they added the second bay later. And my guess would be that they probably they enclosed that porte cochere at the same time they added the first bay, I would think. It might have been the second. But in terms of period, in terms of materials, it definitely, you can tell it was not original. It's more similar to what they did with changes on the west side with the enclosing the windows, and so it doesn't look original. And Cal is here; he may be able to answer that as well. So.
Okay.
I do have a question, Dennis.
Okay.
How tall is the screen, the secondary parapet, if you will?
I'll ask Connor or Michael to answer that if you don't mind, just so we know what the details on that are. So I think it's about 42 inches is my recollection.
Thank you, Dennis.
Yep.
I'm sure we'll be asking more questions. Before we move on to the applicant, I just want to back up a little bit and explain the procedure for this hearing, for those of you that may not know. We had the presentation from the staff. We'll have the presentation from the applicant. Then there'll be questions from the board of both of you. Then we'll have public comments, which are limited to 3 minutes each. And then the applicant responds to anything that the public comments on. Then we'll close the public hearing, and then we will discuss it here on the board and vote on it. So that's the process going forward. Okay, so the applicant, if you would come forward and state your name and address, and then.
Good evening, my name is Michael Brancher. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Calumet Country Club. I live in Highlands Ranch at 436 Rose Finch Circle. So I'm here on behalf of the club. Thanks for taking the time to review it with us. Just a little history on our proposal and what we looked at this property for. As you may know, the club is undergoing a complete renovation. The building has been demolished after 60 years, and we're in the midst of rebuilding it right now. It's about 11 more months of construction for the main building. It's a 51,000 square foot facility going into Columbine Valley. So in the absence of that existing structure, we have no place to entertain or provide amenities for the membership. We did undergo a $2 million renovation of our swimming pool late last year. It opened Memorial Day weekend. We've been using that to maximum effect since that time, but that's now closed as of last weekend. And the idea was to have a facility that we could host the members for food and beverage through the winter months. We have 560 members. What could we offer them? And having been in Telluride and having this sort of component available to our members there on a ski level, it was sort of a harebrained scheme of mine to find something downtown. I didn't think we would until Delizio's opened up last November, unexpectedly for us. We met with the owner at that time and really moved quickly to assess, could it be renovated It had been a vacuum shop for several decades, and then it had been Delizio's for, I believe, 8 years, and serving as a food and beverage establishment. I thought it would be fairly simple to convert that into something more usable on a temporary basis for the membership. So we moved forward with a lease and an option to extend. So our lease continues through next year, through the end of 2017. We have an option to continue from there, which I hope we do. But at this point, the membership are looking for opening the next building on property next September, and then reevaluating at that time. When we looked at the space, it looked as though, there wasn't a functioning kitchen. Even though it had been a restaurant, there was no hood, there was no grease interceptor. And so those are the two primary issues we looked to address. We brought in our owner's rep, Connor Bancroft is here with us tonight. Bryant Construction came in and helped us as well, and a number of consultants that come through to see if it was viable, and we thought it was. What ensued was not a 3-month renovation, but a 10-month renovation, and several $100,000, well beyond our expected spend on the project. We had to reinforce the ceiling structure. We had to vent out onto the flat top roof. We had to overcome a number of obstacles for this historic building, and it's been a challenging process. I think everything is done at this point. We are ready to operate immediately with approval from the city. And so far, everything's been submitted, all of our plans and permits, reviews, health department, things of that nature. We need historic approval to continue forward, to make sure we have already got our liquor license. It's a private liquor license. So we're very, very close. I have a couple of videos I could show you. If you have any questions for me first, I'll be happy to entertain anything that you might have now.
And just so you know, we can see everything down here. That's why we're not turning around.
Yeah, thank you. So I've made a little slideshow for the membership. If you'd like to see that, it really just shows the transformation from Delizio's into what we call Columbine on Main. It's a 3-minute clip if you'd like to see that. Sure. Thanks. say the better part of half of those were this week's final touches to prepare this space. I think you can see that the biggest issues are really reinforcing that ceiling beam. That was unexpected. It had been venting into the attic, really against code. Really nothing was to code. And in meeting with the health department, they've been a great resource for us. Just thrilled with the improvements, very complimentary about the work we've done. We've worked with them very closely to make sure everything is to standard. All the wiring is done properly into code. So we feel really good about what we've done with the space. And of course, I don't want to let it go at this point with only 12 months left, but 14 months left on the lease. It doesn't really make much sense. We have well over $300,000 in the space now. We'd like to see it thrive. I'll show you a couple more shots here from this is the original exterior. I worked with Mr. Swain to pick the colors. I had a really hideous bright blue. We muted it, restored the sconces on the side, on the pillars there. Pretty simple color palette there. The sidewall, you can see the cracked concrete. This is on the west side, looking back at the building. That slab was a nightmare, very expensive, but we did grade the entire thing. We chipped out the rest of it at the owner's request to make it into a smooth space that could be used as a patio at some point. We don't have plans for that now, but it is an option for the owner. The old patio cover that had been put in a few years prior, you can see was tarnished. There's a slit in the plastic. The owner did replace those. You have beautiful new panels, thermal heaters inside. Makes it winter worthy. And then here's really from the park, you have the best view of that roof work. We've already gone in and painted the bases to match the color palette. Difficult to see the custom quartz countertop and blue panel work we put on the temporary bar. The bar, there's nothing running through it. There's no electricity. There's no power, no plumbing. They had a flip-down bar initially there, but it was badly damaged. It was like a fiber board that had been chipped terribly. So we replaced it and put in this temporary panel that can be removed. It would be a shame because the quartz is custom tailored to replace the existing panel that had been there. You see there are dining tables in front, but it is removable. If you didn't want to use it as a restaurant, you could certainly take down the vent here on top, but to function as a restaurant, which was the requirement of the lease, these are the things we had to have approved back earlier in the year. So we submitted our plans. That was part of the work, but you can see it is significant. And then a simple shielding of it, the idea is to mask the view by recreating this sort of wrought iron appearance above it. But we don't have any plans of using the roof as a second story, but if you wanted to shield this from view, you could put up a makeshift fence up there that would help to disguise the work on the roof. Those were, and then we really came to you to look for if there's any different way to go before we spend any more money on the roof. What are we looking to hide it from? It could simply stay as it is with the venting as you see it there.
Would you go back to the screening slide, Michael? So what would you describe that, what you intend to do with the screening? Is that solid or is that?
It's basically a mock wrought iron fence with a netting to screen in between it, like a wind shield.
Okay.
Like your tennis courts, we have those something like that to allow airflow, but to disguise it more.
So it obscures but doesn't block.
That's right.
The airflow and the visual.
What is the screen made out of? What is the material of the screen?
Well, generally, like the tennis courts, we have like a nylon mesh screen, but we can go any number of ways in that. I'm not committed to a product there.
Is that the color, or what will the color be?
We had thought it would probably be black, but we can go any way you like.
Because I think we want to make sure that you don't draw your eye to it and it calls attention.
Yeah, that was one of the concerns, but if it's just blacked out, it may be such a presence. We're trying to really represent here that it's that wrought iron styling and the netting behind it. It wasn't intended to be white, but That is, we could just put a netting out there. I really think that as you walk down, when you come over the bridge, you can see it, but from Main Street, you'd have to walk the space, I guess, to see if your eyes are drawn up to it.
And then the roof screening over the exhaust fan, that wasn't included in the packet that we received. Is that something that is going to be, that you're proposing to implement here
The roof screening,
around the exhaust fan?
That was included, yes. We didn't have a visual of that in the packet, but we did describe it, so yeah.
Okay.
section here,
So not that
no.
section, but over by the exhaust fan,
The
yeah.
big
this is the
one.
more prominent structure, right? This vent that helps pull the air out of the kitchen, it has to be that size to make it function for, it's a 13-foot hood.
Well, and I would think, and David, maybe you would have ideas, being the architect, to have that screen be something that is not going to pull your eye up to it, have it more obscure.
I would think,
I have no
yeah,
idea what.
going with the darker colors, it just falls away more or less like a set backdrop. Where I think that the white netting, I would have a little bit more concern, hesitation around. But with a black, more or less solid or slightly opaque, to allow that airflow, I think would work pretty well.
Well, the plane of the building is more horizontal. Perhaps instead of having vertical balusters, horizontal ones over the right-hand side of what we're looking at, and then something on an angle that kind of mimics the roof pitch up by where the vent is, might minimize the visual impact of that, because obviously that's very impactful, the way it's drawn there.
Yeah, it seems to me if it was, you don't want to be able to see through it, which almost looks like what that is. I don't know that that does a lot of good if you can see through it.
Yeah,
Is that kind of the idea, to have the slats that you see through? You need to be able to get the
We're
air.
completely open to suggestion on it.
Okay.
Honestly, looking at the swamp cooler that was there at the old vacuum shop we saw was more prominent. It was even taller. It was on the peak of the roof. I would probably just let it disappear. If you paint it, it starts to chip. But we can certainly try any masking. We're willing to do any number of versions to fix it. Not to fix it. I don't think it's not that it's broken. It is what it's intended to be. It's now a restaurant. These are the essentials to get those pieces that were permitted to create that space. I think a simple wrought iron style with a mesh backing would help disguise it if it's deemed necessary.
I would even suggest a very simple design, maybe not even have any sort of ornate railing mimicking detail, and something very plain and simple, because the more detail or ornamentation you do to that, the more your eye is going to be drawn up. So I would be more in the favor of seeing something that's more of maybe just a ribbed vertical or horizontal configuration with minimizing the visual ability to see through, but still allowing some of that airflow for code requirements.
I do want people to think that we have a second level. We have that second level at the tavern and at Merle's. We're not trying to get them to think we have another floor. So you're right, I'm concerned about drawing attention to it. That would be the ironic conclusion. So.
One other question I had, and I didn't see in some of the specifications of the exhaust fan, is since that is for a Type 1 commercial hood, it is a grease exhaust fan. Is there a grease guard or grease gutter incorporated into that portion of the exhaust fan? Then over time that will, spew grease and will drip down over the catch basin and fall across the painted surface, perhaps creating an eyesore.
Perhaps Connor would know better that level of detail. For what it cost me, it better not spew grease. But I don't know. Maybe we can get Connor up to address that shortly. So Connor believes that it does have that, but we can get specifications on.
And Steve Hinckley knows about that as well. So, Steve, you want to come up?
Hello, my name is Steve Hinckley. I'm the Chief Building Official for City of Littleton. We have a couple different aspects with that Type 1 hood exhaust. It first is going to require maintenance, and it requires being hinged. So in the event of a fire, the firefighters will, go up to the exhaust fan, pick it up 90 degrees, and be able to put their hoses into the opening of the grease duct. The other issue is clearances. It requires a 10-foot clearance horizontally, and that can be reduced with an exception to 5 feet. It does meet the intent of the code to put screening up to it, but it needs to remain below the top of the barrel where it exhausts. It does have a grease trough for maintenance. Code-wise, meeting the intent of the code, it does meet the intent of the code the way it sits right now. If you are going to put screening on that, it will have to be a removable piece so they can do maintenance and they can utilize that hinged system. It is an engineered captive air system from the hood up to the exhaust. The other lower portion of the screening, they can do anything they want. There's 2 types of screening. There's ballasted screening, which is a weighted system, and then there's a attached screening that will have to meet a wind load calculation. And that's all I have right there. Any questions?
On the screening on the exhaust fan there, would it be a requirement to keep 2 sides open perhaps?
I would
or maybe
suggest
just-
2 sides. You could not enclose it at this point because, again, for firefighting access, those are required to be maintained under a program. I've been involved in many grease duct fires on non-maintained type 1 hood exhausts. When they're maintained, they're very safe. If they aren't maintained, they become a hazard. But they meet the intent of the code. Everything has met the intent of the code and has passed, by the way. All items in the proposed Columbine on Main have passed at this point, as far as code goes, building code.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you.
Thanks for clarifying that.
Any other questions for myself?
Would you go back to the prior slide and just show the vent fan without the screening? It's almost less intrusive than having the screening around it to me, especially if it were darker color.
Yeah,
For the
I
vent
think,
fan, I would agree.
Yeah. The other,
You could push back
gotta be
that
screened, I
netting
think.
Yeah,
from
that has to
the
be
edge
screened.
of the
lower
building tighter to the equipment. You put a black mesh closer to the equipment that's removable.
Yeah.
Instead of putting a railing on the absolute edge of this extension, that would certainly be less obvious.
I think painting it too, per the staff recommendation, will really help a lot too.
So it's not going to be bright, shiny silver.
No.
Painted black or painted blue?
Well, I think the recommendation was to paint it to match the roof tiles, right, Dennis?
That was our
As closely as you
recommendation. That was
could.
our thought. Yeah. The board may think differently.
Dark.
So you're suggesting,
Darker, yeah.
Mike, maybe not to put the screen up at all?
You know, I think there's less visual impact without the screen, I think, don't you? At least the way that it was shown.
No, you know,
At the exhaust fan or at the HVAC
At
and
the exhaust fan.
Oh, the
I think
exhaust
I think the
fan, yeah.
lower level, I think,
Yeah,
does
I thought you
require
were talking about
that.
lower
Yeah.
level.
Okay, no,
the
I'm talking
exhaust-
about the upper.
The exhaust fan maybe would be okay if it's just painted, but I think the lower part, because there's so many pieces and parts going on there.
We could certainly start with painting it black, immediately, and then reevaluate and see if it made it better or worse. Painting I can do quickly and affordably, so we could change it from color to color to make sure that
Or maybe do it the same color as the screen, so when you're looking through the screen, you're not seeing it so much. I'm still not clear on the material that you're proposing for the screen, that goes around it. It would be opaque, but it would be solid, right?
I'm
Be
thinking of a
solid?
tennis court windscreen.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Now I can picture it.
Yeah,
But
you know,
not green, probably.
Not
No,
green.
black. So they, they have them in every, like we have, black Columbine flowers. We got Columbine all over it if you want, but we, we're thinking it to make it to hide. It could be a gray, it could be black. And those are. You really can't see through them. So I want to be careful with how dark it is. We can get it up there and stage it and see what we think before we make it permanent. Do some sample, do a mock-up.
I really like your suggestion of leaving the vent exposed and screening on the lower level, the equipment on the lower level. The screen on the lower level actually looks like it belongs there. When you kind of stick it on top of.
For the
it
big
just
vent, you
looks
mean on the top,
fake,
very top.
like you've stuck this on top of a roof.
Just gets
I would
smaller.
agree.
More massive.
Yeah,
more mass,
yeah. I really like that idea.
Yeah,
So
on
screen,
the far
screen
left.
this
there.
area here,
Yeah.
Right.
recess the screening back closer to the, and then leave this open and paint it.
The color of that, the bluish color.
The lower level blue.
Yeah,
The exterior of the building, that color. Your suggestion that
yeah.
is painted on the,
Just to kind of have it match the little base that's built on top of.
Is that base the same color as the building, Michael?
It looks
No.
like it.
It's
Oh, it
it's
is,
already
yes.
been painted?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
The
Yeah,
base and the bar both match this exactly. We call it a steel blue. It looks awfully gray to me, but this is what our designer picked. I had a neon blue. Dennis said, "How about cream?" It's okay. Let me go back and find something that fits the community, a little bit better. This is you get a pretty good sense. Look at the photos. You can see it's sort of there's blue in there. A lot of gray.
yeah, I like the gas lines painted the color of the building. I think it. I
Yeah, they
think
disappear.
That,
We did the same thing inside the roof, in the interior, yeah, absolutely.
yeah, it blends in a lot better. I had a couple of things about some other pieces of this. Do you want to? On the covered patio, the black covered patio, did you make any changes on that at all, or that's the way it
The
is?
owner replaced the panels that have been slashed and faded, but no changes structurally. It's
Okay,
just a
so
newer
it's still
panel.
could be a temporary,
Yeah, the panels are
structure.
removable,
it is still removable, okay.
right? The whole structure is temporary, actually. It's, you could dismantle it very quickly.
Okay. But you intend to keep it up, obviously, for you, your,
That was the selling point for us, was having that space makes it viable in the winter, yeah.
especially going into the winter.
We have 28 seats inside,
Mm-hmm.
so it's pretty tight.
Yeah. And my other question was about the patio bar, and what is going to happen with that in the winter?
Will be unused. yeah.
I mean, it'll be sticking out, right, still?
Well, it's a 14-inch counter. It's a white quartz. We're hoping to have the bar serviceable, but at dinner service, it will certainly not be functional.
But there is a way that you can put it more into the interior.
No.
So that the garage
We'd have to
door would
remove
come
it
down.
completely and just have a gaping hole into the back of the bar, which we thought was worse. When you open the garage door, you see all the equipment, all the bar equipment will be visible. So we're trying to just screen that.
I think the garage door is still there, Michael, is that right? It's just on the interior?
Garage door's there, absolutely. So if you,
Right.
yeah, we intend to use the outdoor space as much as the indoor. It's much like the new clubhouse. But you're right, in that December, January timeframe, we expect it will be closed, the majority of the times. We've got brand-new aluminum furniture and umbrellas, blue and white umbrellas there on the patio. Frankly, it's hard to actually see the bar. I would like to see it be, used at some point.
Any other questions for the applicant right now? We may have more later. Anybody? Okay, thank you.
Thank
A
you.
pleasure, thank you.
I'll now open the hearing to the public for comments, limited to 3 minutes. Is there anyone Who do we have here? Nobody on here, right? Yes, you may come forward, Cal.
Hi, good evening. My name is Cal Murup. I'm the property owner. When I took this building over back in 1981, it was vacant for 6 years, and before that was a glass company for like about 30 years. And then, of course, I subleased it for a flower shop and a lawnmower shop. And then I finally decided to move my vacuum store into it. I stayed there for 27 years, and the building, it had the garage doors where you drive through at the time, and it remained like that till finally in '05 when I vacated the property on purpose because I wanted to bring a restaurant to downtown Lowellton and make that property stand out and make a statement for anybody that's driving down Lowellton Boulevard to downtown Lowellton. And when I met Bob Mickus, it may take more than 3 minutes, I hope you don't mind. Bob Mickus, the owner of Delizio, he came in with the idea of doing a bakery. And then he made the mistake. He said, Cal, what do you like to see here? I said, well, to be honest with you, Bob, I'd like to see a bakery, an ice cream, a coffee, a tapas restaurant, not topless, tapas, and a cheese bar. And of course, he opened as a bakery and then transformed into all of these. He ran it for about 8 years, and then Columbine came. And what a transformation. What a transformation. I mean, I tip my hat to you guys. The time, the money they put in it to make a statement. And this building will make a statement for whoever coming down Main Street into downtown Lowellton. So when I vacated in '05, I really thought it will lease in 30 days. It took 3 years to finally get what I wanted to get. I had the number of businesses that I thought that would be detrimental for Main Street. I had 3 gentlemen wanted to do Mexican restaurants. I said, no, we have Jose. And I come up with a different idea. It's yours. But finally it happened with Columbine. They put their heart and soul in it. They did a beautiful building, beautiful job. And they did it up to code, so we're good. I have more to say, but I'll leave it up to you now if you want to ask any questions.
I have a question for you, Cal. Once Columbine's lease is up, will you then lease it to another restaurateur, or do you think Columbine will be staying as an ancillary building to what they've got at the country
Well,
club?
I prayed for Jesus, Allah, and Moses for them to stay there for the next 20 years. So hopefully they'll answer my call. If they do leave, definitely it will remain. I would like to keep it as a restaurant just to make Lowellton stand out as that building to be a gateway to downtown Lowellton, to let people know that we are alive, we're happening. There's energy, there's synergy here. It's not like a drive-through. I remember days when I used to have the vacuum shop. I remember coming down on a Sunday, and I didn't see a single car on Main Street. And on Saturday, I would close at 1 or 2 o'clock. It's the same thing. It was a deserted town. It was a ghost town. And now, look at Lowellton. I still think we're 10 years behind to where I'd like to see it, but it's
It was
getting there.
Pod Town, too, wasn't it?
Pardon?
Pod Town.
Pod Town.
Yeah. We had the dreaded
Well,
pods.
nobody asked me about that.
Never mind.
Nobody
Keep
asked
going.
me about that. No, but
Yeah.
really, Columbine did a great job. I mean, their vision, for their members, for the future of Lowellton, I think they did a heck of a job.
Thank you.
Could you, I'm backing up again, could you state your name and address again for the public record? We all know who you are.
Thank you. Well, I was I have to tell you the story after I tell you my name and address. Cal Murup, 6323 South Santa Fe Drive, Lowellton, 80120. I have to tell you the story because it means a lot to me. I got a message from the city that there's a historic meeting at the courthouse. And just like everybody else, I went up. And I was sitting in a room, in a big room with big tables, and there was like about 80 of us, business owners, merchants, and property owners. And the board was sitting just like you were, and they were talking about the historic district. And then, of course, they put it up to vote, and I was the only one who voted it in. Then they asked who would vote against it. Everybody voted against it. I remember then the city manager, Jim Wood, came up to me and said, "Cal, call me tomorrow if your windows are broken." I didn't know what he was talking about. And about 3-4 weeks later, I was walking down Main Street, and I ran into a good friend of mine, Bill Hopping. And we started discussing, how we go about getting Main Street designated. He said, "Who do you think would join you?" I said, "Well, I don't know." And then Rick Aker was walking by. I said, "Rick, come on over here." He came over. I said, "Would you do this?" He said, "Yes." And then Bill said, "Well, we need one more person." I said, "Let's walk over to Valor," because I knew Dick Valor would join. And of course, he joined right away. And of course, within, I don't know, a few months, maybe 3-4 months, we presented to City Council, and it was voted 7-0. 2 stories happened after that. The mayor came up to me and said, "Whoever thought it took an immigrant to save our street?" And then, gentleman, his wife, not Amy, was on the council at the time, Pat Cronenberger. Her husband came into my store. He said, "How did you do it?" I said, "Do what?" He said, "You got designated as a historic district. I've been working on it for 20 years. I don't know. Presented to City Council." I'm not giving myself a lot of kudos. This is really to the city itself and the citizens and the merchants and the property owners that really made this happen. So,
Well, we thank you for your initiative on that.
absolutely.
Look what we have today, so thank you for that.
Sure. Thank you for your time. Anything else?
Not at this time. I think we're good.
I'm bringing one more restaurant, so be patient.
Okay. A comment from anyone else? Public? Pam?
Good evening, Historic Preservation Board. My name is Pam Chadbourne. I live a block and a half from here. So my comment is about dismay with the process. I don't understand what happened here, but to me, there's a clear failure in the intent of having Historic Preservation Board issue a certificate of appropriateness before the construction is complete. So let me say, I talked to the Delicia's guy before he moved in, and he wanted to eventually have a kind of restaurant there. And I spoke to him maybe a year later, and he says, "Gee, I can't get the city to do the grease trap." So I know for a fact, oh, I'm sorry, the timer.
You're okay.
Okay. So I know for a fact that the city knew at the time that this kind of use required the grease trap and these kind of things, and the city had problems with it. So he was there for 8 years and then left without ever implementing that change. What's interesting now is a new tenant comes in, does the work, is permitted to do the demo and the work. How? When Delicia's could not. Now, I have questions about what happened inside the city at every step here, but to me, there's a clear failure. And I'm going to bring up for Louthan, remember the Louthan roofs. And the Louthan neighbors came down here, 5 of them pretty angry because their historic district was compromised by these roof vents, very interesting, roof vents, remember that? A huge vent in the side of the building, one of the houses that totally didn't fit, another kind of vent that didn't fit the district. And that got permitted before it was viewed by historic preservation. I don't think historic preservation was ever consulted, in fact. And then Bristlecone came to you with their hands out for a grant, and a month later then they came for their certificate of appropriateness. Historic Preservation Board, you can tell I'm upset. Maybe it's not with you. Something's wrong with the city. You need to see this stuff earlier. And we need far greater justification for changes and awareness of them before they happen so that we can do something with them. This is a temporary tenant, and it's a private club. Maybe after a couple of years it'll be something else, who knows? But boy, what happened here is not right. So thanks for listening to me talk about that. I hope that you raise questions. I, as a citizen, have little effect, but you are entitled to have a decision on this type of stuff before it's done. And I think you should stand up and make yourselves seen and heard about what went wrong here. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. I think, too, for the record, and Dennis, correct me if I'm wrong, with Bristlecone, I think the COA and the grant was in the same meeting.
I think they were separate meetings, but
Are they separate meetings?
whenever you do a grant, it's contingent upon getting the COA. So you have a history of actually granting funds prior to the COA being issued, just because we only do the grant cycle once a year.
So it was done contingent on the
often,
COA.
right, exactly.
Okay. Any other comments from the public? Okay. I will close the public hearing at this point, and we'll discuss it here on the board. And I think because there's so many different issues.
Board member, the applicant should get a chance to respond.
Oh, okay. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess my only response, I appreciate the comments, and I understand the sentiment. We feel we want to be good tenants on the street. We want to bring our vision of an upscale establishment to enhance downtown Littleton to meet Cal's view. He made a condition to take the space to put in the grease interceptor in the hood, and met with Mr. Swain and Anastasia last year in November to see, can we do this? Is it feasible? We got the permits. We feel like we've behaved above board on all accounts, and I can understand concerns over the process as a general rule, but in our case, feel like we've really been good tenants. We've proceeded, we've tried to adhere to every possible step along the way, and have been open with the town. We've welcomed them in through many changes with the city staff, and we've had everything's been supported. So I hope you see that our efforts are not to certainly, dump this on you at the last second for an approval once we've already passed that point. And we've been really transparent for some 11 months now, and I appreciate your support in really finishing this now. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Mr. Mickus.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
That's the end of the public comment. I'm sorry.
I'm going to speak, if you don't mind. I'm sorry, but 1 minute. Mr. Mickus went out of business because he divorced the business and married his food truck. And he told me face to face, he said, Cal, it's much easier for me to manage one person than to manage that restaurant. That was 3 years ago when he said that. He went out of business, not because there was no grease trap. I advocated for a grease trap for him. He was not willing. He put a temporary one. Thank you.
Anything else from the public? Anything, the board members have any other questions for the applicant or the staff at this time?
I have one for staff. Dennis, at what point did this rise from a staff level COA to a board level COA, and why?
It's a good question, Michael. Yeah, when Mike and I met initially and we went through the drawings, the indication was that the existing parapet was actually going to hide most of the things that we saw from the drawings that we had. And so that only changed over time. It was my lack of understanding of the drawings, or perhaps just the drawings weren't complete. Steve Hinckley had not yet started. He was just beginning at that point. And so we had a transition at that going through. And so it was only when we saw the construction going above and beyond what we thought had been approved, and we actually had in the drawings, that we went back and And Steve and I went over and met with them and said, here's what we need to do. We need to go through the COA process. There were some initial things we need to do, and to take it up to a board level, because suddenly we had items on the roof that were very visible and above and beyond what we thought we could do at staff level.
So were there design changes during construction, or was it just kind of an error?
I think it was just the drawings either were not initially complete, or our reading of them was not accurate, perhaps. But the drawings that we saw didn't seem to indicate that we had this. But we went through and discussed the intent of the design guidelines, and that we really didn't want to be able to see that kind of impact on the building. Really trying to minimize that, and talked about the risk. So we just had just misunderstanding, I think, on both parts in terms of what was happening. We really thought that when we had the vents, when we had the ventilation going on top, it wasn't going to be that significant.
So if the equipment were lower, I mean,
right,
closer to the roof line, then it would have been a staff level?
Right. That
approval?
was our thought, that if it was below the parapet, it would have been a staff level. It wouldn't have been as visible. So.
Okay, so if there was no visibility at all,
right,
then it would be staff level. Okay, thanks.
Anything else? For the applicant or the staff? Okay, now I will close the public hearing. I'm thinking there's a lot of different pieces and parts here, and my thought would be to go through the proposed motion on the staff communication, one at a time, and just discuss those items before we go back and make a motion. Does that sound like a good way to do that? So if you just go to the last page on the staff report. Does everybody have that? Yeah, maybe you can.
Thank you.
No, go through the staff communications.
Wait at the end.
Last page. Last page?
Right here?
No, mine was.
Page 6 of 7.
I wonder if you guys have it.
Yeah, right. Is this
There you
in here?
go.
Staff recommendation, proposed motion.
Proposed motion. Yeah,
Gotcha.
why don't we just go through those?
Okay.
items? Is that, and you have that, right, Dave? Okay, you've got it there. Okay, number one, for the platform and the dormers. Use the building material originally used on the building, or if that is not possible or optimum, use materials that match the original closely. Any discussion on that?
So when we're talking about the platform, that's where the vent fan is?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And the dormer is up there too.
Right. Yeah.
So use building materials originally used on the building, or if that's not possible, use materials that match the original closely. Everybody agree? Okay. Paint the visible sides gray or a similar color that matches the primary color of the roof shingles.
Agree.
Agree with that?
So the platform that's currently a bluish color, is that what we're,
I think
and so it would be more of a charcoal gray?
it's more to match the roof shingles than it is to match the building,
Good, yes.
which I think is good since it's up there. So more match the roof shingle color. Okay, number two, for all silver-colored equipment and ductwork, paint them gray or a similar color that matches the primary color of the roof shingles. And I think it's important that all this color is all the same color. Paint them gray or a similar color that matches the primary color of the roof shingles.
Agree.
Agree? 3, for all rooftop mechanical equipment and ductwork, construct an opaque screen around all rooftop equipment. Place the screening so that it's a single screen and not just around each individual thing, which I think, per what you were showing us, it was just one solid screen. And I'm still not totally clear on the color and the materials, or what we want to say about that. I think, do we want it to be black or the roof shingle color?
As you go up, you almost want to go with the same, how do I say it, hue, but a darker shade of that same color, which minimizes the visual impact. So if you have a blue or a you know, your kind of bluish gray below, maybe a darker bluish gray, using that same palette, but with a little bit more black in it for whatever your screen would be. Then I think.
Would you mind bringing up the photograph with the screen on it while we're talking about it? It'd be helpful. Yeah, there, perfect. So you're saying to do it a darker,
Yeah, it looks pretty dark now, but I think in the light, that's a lighter color down below.
The building color.
Because I think that's in shade right there, isn't it, Michael? That photo?
Let me pull up
yeah, I think,
Yeah,
probably.
depending on
this is
which
probably
angle
the
you look at.
best
Yeah,
Image there, you can see the,
there you go.
so you're suggesting the same color palette as the paint on the building or of the roof shingles?
Well, the darker, well, the roof shingles are darker, aren't they?
We were talking about making the materials, the platform and the fan itself match the color of the roof shingles as
Right.
opposed to the side of the
Right.
building, the exterior of the building.
And the roof's darker than the building, isn't it? So
Yeah,
I
it's
think
more of a-
that's consistent, I think,
Okay.
yeah.
So then the screen should be about the same color.
As the roof, yeah.
Keep it all the same color.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Well, maybe that's something we need to add. Construct the opaque screen around all rooftop equipment. Using well, we could add the same thing as what's on the one before, paint them gray or a similar color. Well, maybe we don't want to even do gray, paint them gray. We want a similar color that matches the primary color of the shingles, right?
Correct.
On all of them. So paint the visible sides gray, we're not going to say anything about that. Okay, number 4, for the large exhaust fan on the platform above the sloping roof of the original building, which would be the big fan on top. By code, it must retain area around it. We do not want that screen. Right.
Although I think we have different information on that than we had originally when we wrote these from Stephen Hinckley. I think he's thinking that we can retain a portion of that open, we just can't cover the entire thing. Is that right, Steve? That can actually be partial screening?
That'd be correct. If you did choose to screen the front street side.
We talked about
That is
not-
correct, Dennis. If you did choose to screen the street side, we still need to maintain access on 3 sides, I would say, in my opinion. But to meet the intent of the code, it does need access for maintenance and for firefighting
Right.
purposes.
2 sides or 3 sides, Steve?
3 sides open,
Sides
screen
open.
1 side.
Okay.
And I think we felt that the screen would bring more attention to it than to just leave it and paint it. Is that?
Agreed.
Agreed. Okay, thank you, Steve. Let's see. 4, let me go back over that. For the large exhaust fan on the platform above the sloping roof, by code, it must be open, okay? So with other equipment, paint the large fan similar color that matches the primary color of the roof shingles. We want to take out gray. 5, for the gas line on the west wall, the gas line has been repainted to match the blue west wall rather than black to match the gutters. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to look at that, but you really don't see it because it's the same color.
That's appropriate.
We all okay on that?
Yeah.
I'm not going to read through the rest of that. Now, the only thing that's not in this motion is anything about the exterior bar and countertop. Do we want to just approve that as is?
My concern about bringing it interior of the garage door space, and we'd probably want to talk to some of the health department, is then you're having an open space that could trap food particles or other debris between the garage door and that partial height wall that during the winter months might cause a health hazard. I think we'd want some clarification if that was a direction to move it inside. Keeping it outside, I think you eliminate that concern altogether.
You guys have a feeling on that? Leave it as is?
Another strong one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whatever makes practical sense, I think.
Okay, maybe we don't. I wonder if we need that in the motion. You can put number 6 What is that called, the patio bar?
Bar ledge.
Patio bar, approved as is. Do you think everything is in here that we discussed? We're good with that. So what we're going to do is take out paint gray and have all of it paint the color that matches the primary color of the roof shingle.
Or match the color of the roof shingle, for instance, for the screening.
Yeah.
And the screen's the same color, Margie?
Right. I think if they're all the same color, nothing will pop out to the eye. Would be my thought. Okay, who would like to make the motion? Well, I think, do we need to read this?
The whole
thing?
thing.
You would, yeah, that'd be
Yeah,
great.
especially since we're taking the gray out, so
Right.
Like, how much
Just-
do we have to read?
I think you have to read all of it because it has to go in the record.
Okay.
But I would just take out the gray.
Okay,
What, can you take yours? There you go.
thank you.
Well, hopefully you can read what I wrote
All
on it.
right. Here. I move to approve the certificate of historic appropriateness for the Summers Oil Service Station at 2299 West Main Street, conditional upon the applicant minimizing the visual impacts of the changes to the exterior of the building. For the platform and dormers, use the building materials originally used on the building, or if that is not possible or optimum, use materials that match the original closely. Paint the visible sides a similar color that matches the primary color of the roof shingles. For all silver-colored equipment and ductwork, paint a similar color that matches the primary color of the roof shingles. For all rooftop mechanical equipment and ductwork, construct an opaque screen around all the rooftop equipment and place the screening so that it becomes a single opaque screen around all the rooftop equipment, or as much of the equipment as possible, rather than a series of screens around smaller areas of equipment. The screen should function as a secondary parapet and should be just high enough to screen the rooftop equipment from Main Street, the sidewalk along Main Street, Biga Park, and Rio Grande Avenue. For the large exhaust fan on the platform above the sloping roof of the original building, by code, that fan must retain a large area around it to retain its effectiveness and safety, so screening is impractical. As with the other equipment, however, paint the large fan or of a similar color that matches the primary color of the roof shingles. For the gas line on the west wall, the gas line has been repainted to match the blue west wall rather than black to match the gutters. The foregoing approval is based on the findings that with the above conditions, the proposed work does not detrimentally alter, destroy, or adversely affect any architectural or landscape feature which contributes to the original historic designation, is in conformance with any applicable adopted design guidelines, is visually compatible with the designated historic structures located on the property in terms of design, finish, material, scale, mass, and height, and is visual compatible with the development on adjacent properties. Let's see, number 6.
I think that was,
Exterior bar, are those just your notes?
oh, that was the patio.
Okay, patio bar approved as is.
May make one amendment before I second, and that is that the screening in number 3, that the screening color should match the roof shingles as well. I don't think we had that in there.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely. I think I tried to write that in there. Okay.
If that's okay with you, Kim, I'll second.
That's great.
Any discussion?
I have a discussion item. Dennis, if the roof has to be replaced, does that require a COA?
Yes, usually we do those as a staff level if they're replacing with the same materials or similar materials in similar color.
So would you then replace the roof with materials to match the color of the screening and the roof equipment?
That's possible.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay, all those, it was seconded, right? You seconded it. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Is anybody opposed?
1 second, please.
You do have the voting board to use tonight. If you'll flip your switch to,
And where would we find that?
so there's a switch there, you'll flip it yes or no, and then Margie, when they're done,
And that may not have been turned on, Mark. It takes a while to warm up, I'm sorry.
Oh,
So it's on, yeah.
is it up for yes and down for no, or how does that?
okay, you can go ahead and do a roll call vote. How about I call out the name and you just give us a vote?
Oh, there it comes.
All in favor?
There, if you flick your switch, it.
Okay. Margie, can you please go ahead and ask for the vote again and everyone do it at the same time?
Could I, everyone in favor? Say yes.
Aye.
All right, the vote is unanimous and the motion passes.
All right. Thank you very much, all of you, for your presentation. And we hope to see a restaurant open to the public someday in that space. Thank you. Okay, let me get back to the agenda here. Sure. Okay, is there public comment on non-agenda items? Anyone? If not, we'll move on to comments, reports, and Dennis,
Okay, great.
community development staff.
Yeah, if you look on the second page, the back page, there's a long list of things we wanted to talk about. The first is the historic walking tour of downtown, and I think Jake is here. Jake is going to give you a presentation that he's been putting together for the walking tour. We're actually getting, I think, some great help from the IS department in terms of, what's potential. So, Jake, if you want to come up and take off, that'd be great.
Thank you, Dennis. Let me set this up really quick. Here we are. All right. Hello, everyone. Hello, members of the board. And my name is Jacob Weaver. I am a GIS intern here at the City of Littleton. I've been an intern here for about 4 months now, since May, and it's been a blast. I've learned a lot, and I've really enjoyed working with GIS and geographic information systems and geographic information in general. So what I have for you tonight is a mobile web application for the historic walking tour of downtown Littleton, which is this brochure that I believe we released it recently, the last couple of years from the communications department. And if you flip through it, it's very, very informative. It's very pretty. But unfortunately, the only thing I could find was the only 1 or 2 photos of historic photos in the whole thing. The rest of it is modern day photos, which is great for when you're walking around trying to find everything. But when you want to learn more about what it looked like previously, as the name alludes to, historic walking tour, I thought, well, let's have some historic photos in here. And so instead of just printing another brochure, we thought, well, let's find something that can work in tandem with it. In my case, it would be a web application, which, as the name implies, it's found on the web, though currently it's not public, so it's still a work in progress. But as a web application, it is available to the public as soon as it's released. This web application has 3 parts, and that includes the map, as you can see over here, the main image over here, and a list of all the stops along the tour down at the bottom. This current format is the desktop format. If I shrink it to this size, it opens up as the web app. And maybe if I can bring it up on my phone, I can show you what it looks like on your phone. It's kind of the same thing. correct? And let me get that out of the background. There we go. Okay. So as you can see, it's the same image as you can see on my phone, though this is what it would look as a mobile app versus the desktop version. So this means that this application could be used from your house if you wanted a virtual walking tour, or from your phone as a personal walking tour that could be used in tandem with the brochure. So without further ado, let's get started.
Pretty impressive, Jake.
Thank you. The app starts out as on the map tab here, though this is the mobile version, it's a little bit different on the desktop. With the map tab, it's interactable just as any map on your phone is. Currently, you have stops and a blue line to show you where the route is. It's a little bit more visible on my phone rather than the screen, so I apologize for that. This home button actually zooms into the whole entire downtown route currently with each and every stop. And each stop you can click on, which will pop up at the bottom here. Now, your first question might be, well, Jake, this is a little tiny image and it looks like it's the modern image. I thought you said it was going to be the historic image. You would be right. So let's find out. As we can see, each of these, by clicking on the thumbnail here at the bottom, it brings up the media tab over here, which is the actual multimedia image. And in this case, they're all images, though you could use videos, I believe. This includes the title, a little caption, a link for more information, and the image itself. So this is another way to explore this app without having to fumble around with a map if you're not familiar with the map. The last tab is the List tab, which lists everything from first to last along the tour. What I especially love this app because it allows you to have these tabs, which if I open up, or links, I'm sorry, in each of those stops, it allows you to put in HTML links to the website and the historical page for that particular stop. So it's really cool because that's not the only thing you can, that's not the only link that you could do. If we had other links such as the Historic Preservation website and any other links that we would want to link for, it can be listed here in the captions. So, and primarily this is a pretty simple app. It's not exactly something that's world-renowned, and a lot of people have been using story maps. Story maps this is the program that we're currently using that's a web-based, and it has a main site, up here, if I can bring that up, that allows users to tell stories with their maps. This means that if you have a story to tell, such as the historical significance and heritage of Littleton, you can share that with a map and other multiple images. So I've currently created a walking tour, which is you use your phone to run a walking tour and learn about each individual spot. However, there's other applications that can be used for different types of whatever type of application you want to use for it. So in this case, we're doing a story map tour, which is a tour, as I mentioned before, and it looks just like that. However, if we would want to, say, develop an application for designated landmarks and districts throughout the city, that would require a little bit more narrative and multimedia. And so perhaps a story map journal might be in order, where you could have images and text to describe whatever you wanted to describe it about. So really, as part of the IS department, we want to help the city employees and the city of Littleton to develop whatever they needed to develop for using IS equipment. However, and in this case, it's geographic information. We know that the city is not just what happens in this room or what happens in this building. It's the entire city. It involves its citizens and its tourists. So in order to tell a story of what Littleton is about, we thought that maybe this is the next step towards the new generation to try and describe those stories to everyone. So if you have any questions, I can certainly answer them here. Otherwise, that is all. Thank you.
I think that's wonderful. What is what will happen with this? I mean, what's the next step?
The next step? Well, currently it needs to be polished to make sure all of the information is correct and so that everything is correct. After that, it should be shared to the website. If I could bring up the website, there is a map gallery under My Littleton, where the majority of the maps live for Littleton currently. These are the navigational maps, and then here are the GIS maps that myself and Jackie have developed. As you can see, the development activity list map is right here, as well as historical districts map. All of these are interactive maps that you can click on to find out more information and basically explore with them. We're hoping that it will live here, but it will also have links in My Littleton's Littleton Histories tab, and then possibly in historic preservation. After that, it's developing more applications that fit your needs or the needs of the city. So,
I think that's great. The map gallery is currently there.
yes, that is
Yes, I haven't.
public.
I've been a lot of places on the website, but I've never, interesting.
What's your timetable, Jake, for getting this up?
Within the next few weeks. I've actually been working with Jennifer Hankinson at the with collections over at the Littleton Museum to get the historical photos. Actually, let's take a look at a few more of those photos. They are all from Littleton collections, and some of them are harder to obtain than others. As you can see, Two Potters is from the 70s. Versus the Coors Building here from 1906, photo 1928. So as we can see, some of them were a little bit more difficult to find than others, but it was still a lot of fun to try and find all of them to learn about their history. So the timetable kind of depends on whether or not these are completely accurate and as proofreaded have to be completed. But I don't expect that to take more than a few more weeks. So,
Do you think you'll be expanding it to include other landmarks, or will it just be downtown?
absolutely.
Oh, good.
Though I would say that we wouldn't necessarily use this application. As I mentioned before, there are other applications that are better fitted for that type of thing. This is a walking tour-esque type of application versus what I said before with the journal. It looks more similar to this, where you have the map on one side and a lot of text and images on the other side. Which could be used to explain, say, local designated landmarks or national landmarks in more detail with more photos. The other thing was kind of a step towards the next step, which would be this. So,
Every time we go to a conference, one of the topics is how do you get younger people to buy into historic preservation or to get them interested in it? And if it's on an app on their phone, I just would think it's a natural, it ought to be in every Littleton public school, Good work, thank you.
This is very cool. It's an elegant solution. And I assume that you've looked at it on a variety of platforms and devices that people might have?
yes. Currently, I've checked it out on my personal iPhone. My coworker, Jackie, she's checked it out on her phone, which is not an Apple product. We've checked it on different
Android products and
tablets and desktops and laptops. As we develop it, within the next couple of weeks, we'll triple check that to make sure that it works on all platforms and maintain it afterwards to make sure that it's always working. So
then it will be an app that we can download. Am I understanding that correctly?
it is a web app, which means it is a link on the website,
Okay.
as similar to these other apps where you just
Okay.
click on it and it'll open in your browser.
Okay.
So you would open it in Chrome or Safari or whatever browser that you happen to be using.
Okay. And again, it'll be in the map gallery, maybe on the historic preservation page, and maybe on the Littleton history page.
Yes,
We'll
well,
have several different places to access it.
several different places to find it is
To
really what
find
I'm
it.
hoping for. Again, this is all determined by the webmaster, of course, so.
Yeah. Well, that's great, Jake. Thank you. That's
Thank you.
wonderful.
I just want to say great job on gathering this data, the information, creating the responsive websites there. And what I think is really exciting about this is as this information grows, that's half the battle, is getting this in a place. And then you have a lot more creativity where how you want to use this information, how you want to tailor it or adjust it as the future needs might be.
Right.
So great job of laying the groundwork on getting this transferred over into this kind of media.
Thank you so much.
That's great.
I'd like to throw out one thing about walking tours, just because you mentioned it. This summer, I attended several of the city council gatherings in the park. Dennis was there. And we got some interesting feedback from someone on the walking tours. And she made the comment that they don't include the courthouse, which is arguably the genesis of historic preservation in Littleton. So perhaps we can include the fabulous courthouse in our walking tours and on the app at some point.
I believe it's here at the end. If I can get a good picture of it, you can kind of see the modern photo of it, but then I'd love to show you the historical photo of it.
I know if they're talking about the Arapahoe County Courthouse, because that's where all of our tours started, the walking tours.
She made a point that
It looks like it's
people
16
didn't know about it.
on the list right here.
Oh, is it?
Yep.
That's
There it
good
is.
if it's included. But she did, Dennis, if you'll recall that, she said that there was no information given on the courthouse.
Well, the tour I did, I gave lots of information.
Oh,
so
that's
I don't
good.
know.
Absolutely, as iconic
It's on a different tour.
as iconic as it is, it should definitely be included. So it is also, these stops are the same stops that are used in this brochure. So they can be used in tandem if someone is uncomfortable using the app. Say your grandparent and your young grandchild who wants to use the app while the grandparent looks through the brochure. And also the information is a little bit different so that they're not reading exactly the same thing, which means they could be used one or use the other or use both. So.
And we can certainly update the brochure too as we
Yes,
expand on that.
absolutely.
App, so.
Yeah, I think it was a good point, David, you brought up. We can always expand it as we go forward.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks.
And Jake referenced, I think, the other map that's showing the historic districts and historic structures that Jackie's been working on, and we need to get more information for her as well, but it's a wonderful app as well. So I think together, it's a tremendous resource that the IS has gotten for us. So.
That's great. Thank you. Okay, Dennis?
Second thing on here is the Louthon Design Guidelines. We have scheduled a joint meeting with Historical Preservation Board and Planning Board for October 10th. That is Planning Board's regular meeting, and what we wanted to do was have an opportunity for you, who will actually make a recommendation to Planning Board on the Louthon Design Guidelines. We're also inviting the residents of Louthon to come to that meeting to get a presentation on that, be able to ask questions of the consultants in preparation for a public hearing that you will have on the design guidelines. You'll make a recommendation from that public hearing to Planning Board, and then they will then consider adopting them. So they currently adopt them, and we've also been talking about actually taking that on to City Council, possibly, so we actually could integrate that into the zoning code and get a little bit more weight with our design guidelines. So we're looking at how do we do that. So.
Just as an FYI, I will be out of town on the 10th, so I won't be able
Okay.
to attend.
October 10th?
October 10th. Yeah, that's too bad. I'd like to do that. Okay, Dennis?
Next thing on here is the joint study session with City Council. We typically have one or two study sessions a year with them. We wanted to go to City Council after we had the grants indicated, those were applied. So Jocelyn's been looking at some potential dates for that. And we're waiting for confirmation for that still as to what date will work for us, but we'll confirm with everybody, make sure it works. So. Next thing is HLI letter and FAQs. My recollection is that I did send those out to everybody. Did you get those? Okay, so, and if you have comments on those, please let me know. We're really depending on HLI to get back to us. I don't know if, Margie, you've heard more back from HLI?
Let me kind of give you a report on that. And Mike and I have been going to the HLI meetings.
Oh, okay, great.
And I'll just read you the little blip out of their notes. I think they're a little uncomfortable on sending out the letter and FAQs at this point.
Okay.
And wanted to start more on a grassroots level.
Okay.
So let me, in this kind of, and will explain kind of where they're at. After much discussion, it was suggested that we get a few buildings designated as local landmarks before embarking on a letter to property owners. if we can get a few properties designated and then reported on in the Littleton report, people will see the benefits and may be more open to designation. Possible designations were discussed. Individual board members will follow up on discussion, potential designation with select individual property owners. So I think, and of course I bring it up at all the HLI meetings that I go to, and I think everybody that knows someone that is in a potential historic landmark are working on that. So I think they felt a little more comfortable, HLI did, starting it out that way before we just send a mass letter out.
Great, sounds good.
But I do have your FAQs and all of that, so I think that's good. And Mike, you want to add to that?
No, I think the idea of Dennis not being overwhelmed by a number of requests or questions, and having the FAQs, I think will really help, because a lot of people do have a lot of questions about how it affects their property and their taxes and their insurance and things like that. So,
If you do have other questions that you'd like answers to, or if they have other questions, we could certainly add those to the list as well, just for their internal use. It's a great thing, just for background.
I think the brochure we did is a really great introductory piece, and I think as they start talking to these people, there might be a lot more questions coming up. But I think we've got it on track. Wouldn't you say, Sonia? Sonia, you've been at all these meetings, and I think everybody is on track to try to work on it individually from a grassroots level.
Yes, I think they are, as you say, do a broadcast letter to better prepared to answer questions.
Right. Yeah, I think if we get, some designated, and then that might be more appropriate then to send out the letter. So we're working on it. Good. Right, Mike?
Margie, just to verify, FAQs, probably everyone knows what that means, but HLI, just can you make sure to say what that is so that
yes,
everyone knows what you're talking about?
HLI is Historic Littleton, Inc.,
which is our nonprofit advocacy group.
Which is a nonprofit advocacy group for Historic Littleton. Thank you, Jocelyn. Okay.
Next item was the DIR building designation. Carl was hoping to be here tonight. He had a conflict, and so he couldn't make it at the last minute. So, but that's the decision, I think, with the board was to look at that. And Carl has been definitely, willing to talk about it and would be interested in that as well. So,
Dennis, could you please explain what DAR is?
Certainly. Daughters of the American Revolution. So, and there are also other groups out there, but that's the one that approached the board. So. Okay.
And Carl is Carl Papert, right?
Papert certainly is, right. It certainly is. He owns the 3 buildings.
From J.D. Hill, and that's where we decided to put the black. Okay.
Correct. Grant recipients updates. We have actually, everyone's moving forward, I believe, with their projects. I think we're in pretty good shape with those for this year. I think we're doing well. So I think we're on schedule for the grants that you voted on this year. So that's good. Littleton Corridor Survey. We actually had our first meeting with the state staff and our consultant, and we're moving forward with that project as well, and they're very excited about that in terms of how we proceed with starting from where Michael and I started. We're going to have a meeting again with the Historical Preservation Board, inviting the property owners. As soon as we get some dates of work, we'll move into probably November, unless there's a sense that may be problematic in the year. But we can look for dates that will work to actually have a meeting with the neighbors and have an explanation of what the project is and get their interest in that and get some information to them in terms of what the project is and what the dates are. So,
will that be concurrent with the surveys then, Dennis?
Yes.
Having the meetings with the property owners?
Yeah, they're doing some preliminary work first. They're going out taking photographs at this point while the weather's good and there are pictures. And then the surveying itself is a much more involved and lengthy process, but they will be doing that over time. We have about a year we're looking forward to with that project. I think it's going to take about that long. So we have 2 consultants on board, Diane Ray, as you know, who actually did the Littleton survey, the mid-century survey, and then also Michael Paglia, who has written a lot about historic preservation and is real active in the greater Denver area with that. So,
And Dennis, to clarify, that's Littleton Boulevard corridor?
It's the Littleton Boulevard corridor, it's only commercial properties.
Yep.
And Michael and I went out and did the surveying, and we actually had found a few buildings that were off of Littleton Boulevard, but were part of the larger corridor that had significance as commercial structures. So many of the buildings actually had been surveyed in either the 2000 or 2005 surveys that were done, and so they're actually updating the ones that have been done previously. They'll move on from there. So, I think that's it.
Great. That's a good project, Dennis.
Yeah, I think it's a really good project. I'm very excited, and they're excited to do it and get started on it. So,
Does Cal own any properties along Littleton Boulevard?
not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I think that's probably long overdue to do that. That's great. Okay, chair/members, the historic walking tours, I can talk about that, and I don't know if everybody heard, but they were a resounding success, I have to tell you. Sharon did a 4 o'clock, I did a 5 o'clock, and Dan Miller did the 6 o'clock, and we each had at least 50 people in our group. I mean, it was unbelievable. And it was so much fun because everybody was very engaged, even though there were that many in the group. They stayed with the group, and I was yelling for an hour and a half trying to be heard. But it was an overwhelming success, and I think HLI, Historic Littleton, Inc., got word of this, and now they're all excited about doing it, and they'd really like to partner with us in doing future walking tours. But I wanted to get an approval since Sharon wrote the script, and it's really an HPB project before we got HLI involved, if that would be okay with everybody on the board. Because I think they would like to actually do the tours, and I don't know how many of the board members want to do that, but it's really a fun thing to do. And I'll check with Dan Miller since he wrote a lot of the script, and Pam, but are you guys okay, who's here, if HLI gets involved and partners with us on that?
Yes.
You're okay?
I think it'd be great to get the, just consent and approval from Dan and Pam.
Yeah,
But,
I will
I think it
definitely talk
extends
to
our
them.
advocacy to the public even more. It's a better reach for sure.
And I
That's
think
another thing we heard at those gatherings in the parks around Littleton this summer, was that people were extremely interested, and they were either really disappointed they had missed it, or they want to take somebody else on it, and they all clamored for additional tours.
Oh, good. Well, that's good to hear. So it brought up the discussion about how do we get the word out, and I think that was the problem that Sharon had initially. In 125th, there wasn't enough publicity for it. And I think the fact that we were in the Western Welcome Week brochure made a huge difference this time. So Gail Keeley, who is the chair of HLI, suggested maybe we try to do it in conjunction with the Art Walk, which is the first Friday, May through August. And if it's okay with you guys, and again, I'll talk to Pam and Dan, Gail and I can meet. I think it's Sudi that owns Outnumbered Gallery. I think she kind of heads up that. We'll talk to her and see if that's a possibility. Does that sound like a...
Yeah, and I think definitely having another tour after Western Welcome Week would be
Yeah.
exceptional.
Yeah.
A lot of people came up and said, "Oh, we didn't know you had a tour. I'd really like to go. When is it?"
Yeah.
"Oh, next year."
Yeah.
So I agree.
So I think if we can get the word out through the Art Walk and do it in conjunction with that, I think, and if a lot of people start showing up, 2 or 3 of us can do the tours on those nights.
And I think, as Kim was saying, I think we were very impressed with the kind of interest we got at the city council outreach events, and I certainly would recommend doing that again next year. So,
and I think we can take the script. I mean, Sharon did such an incredible job on that script, and maybe integrate some of Dan's architectural comments into the script, and we can work on that script and try not to make it too terribly long. But, okay, good. So we're good. I'll talk to Pam and Dan, make sure they're good, and then I'll work with HLI on that. Because we wouldn't have one going until May next year. Western Welcome Week booth. Do you want to report on that, Mike?
Well, I got it
You
all
weren't
set
here,
up, but
though.
I
You
wasn't
set it up and you
here.
weren't here.
I was supposed to be or at a wedding in Washington, and my wife went into renal failure that week.
No.
And it lasted until the following Wednesday. So I was in town, actually, but I was at the hospital the whole
Yeah,
time. So
oh, no.
I hope it all went well. But, everybody at Western Welcome Week was very helpful in terms of getting us the booth, so that was good. And she's fine now, by the way.
It sounded like maybe the most useful thing from Western Welcome Week was the brochure. I was getting the word out on that, because I know we had trouble getting people. It's a busy time of the year to get board members there, and so maybe if we just focus on getting into the brochure, is that something we can do without having a booth at the parade?
Yeah. Well, what I forgot to say was HLI or Historic Littleton Inc. was very instrumental in helping man the booth, so it was a really
And they
nice
partnered with us
collaborative
on it.
effort between HPB and Historic Preservation Board and HLI.
Yes, that was a great way to share resources, have additional input, and, different perspectives coming at it for sure.
And you worked the booth.
I did
didn't
work
you?
there for one shift, and
Right.
a ton of people were there. A ton of people really wanted to go on the walking tours, and so they were a little disappointed to hear that they've already missed it. So that was one of the recommendations I took forward from that, was to incorporate more walking tours for sure, especially soon after Western Welcome Week. Another idea that was brought up actually by one of the Historic Littleton Inc.'s members was to do a sort of video story. I'm not sure exactly, it's just kind of spitballing here, but so many people come up and tell stories about a place they were at, or when they grew up, what it was like, or maybe even have pictures, with them to share. And having some way to document this informal storytelling aspect could be a neat project to perhaps undertake in the future. So maybe to consider for next tent or Western Welcome Week endeavor.
That was one reason that the tour that I led took so long, is because there were a lot of people on the tour that were from, that had lived here a long time. And so I encouraged them. I said, if you have any input, on what I'm saying or anything, and they did. They were very engaged, and they told some great stories, just little stories. And that's one reason it took twice as long. It was fun. So that's good. I'm glad it seemed to be a big hit, those tours. We'll get everybody involved. So the storytelling, that's...
Margie, the other thing on the meet, eat, and greet, that I know that was mid of last year when HPB started going to those, and Kim, you came to a couple of those, but I really think that was a fantastic additional way to get some visibility about what is available in the walking tours. So definitely let's make sure we're getting those dates out to everyone so that you can attend that, because that is really another great way to promote all the great things that you guys are doing.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Jocelyn. Anything else on the booth? Yeah, because I was there for about an hour or two, and there was a lot of, people would come up. I think, Denise, you put together the then and now. Didn't you do that? That really attracts people, because they all come up and they want to look at that.
It's a great conversation starter for sure.
And it's a very good, conversation starter, is what I would say. So that worked really well. And also our Historic Preservation Board sign that you must have put together at the last minute. So that was good. HLI awards. And I have no update on that. Do you, Sonia? We haven't
agreed.
talked.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. We agreed not to do it until November 2017. We did agree on that date. And in the meantime, there should be some other candidates. The board felt generally we awarded what needed to be awarded, and there wasn't much else on the horizon yet. Since then, several things have happened. So that's what we're looking at this point.
Maybe even we could do it in May, which is Historic Preservation Month. Was there? I don't know. We can talk about it because I'm...
Discuss it again, but that was what came out.
Okay.
We can talk about May again. I'll bring it up again.
Yeah, that would be good, because I bet you we could find some buildings. Huddle of meetings. Does anybody, I know when I was scheduled, I was out of town and couldn't go, and I don't know if anybody did, and I don't know where we are in the schedule.
I'm up next.
Okay.
So I'm going next Wednesday.
Okay.
Anything that I should broadcast other than what we've already talked about?
Now, I imagine someone has already talked about the grants.
I can update that.
Done, yeah,
That.
that'd be great.
And then mention the walking, I mean,
Yeah, the walking
the
tour.
walking tours and collaborating with anything that Greg Reinke does downtown. That's a great time to have people, I mean, because there's a lot of people downtown. So that might be good times for us to have tours.
And I think if you give a heads up on Jake's walking tour too, the app is a
Oh, yeah,
fantastic thing to let
Jake's,
people know about too, yeah.
I'll do that. That's a great idea.
These are the morning meetings, is that right?
It's at 8 o'clock in the morning at Town Hall Arts Center. And it's mostly the downtown Littleton merchants
Yes.
show up, and Greg Reinke usually runs
Yeah.
it.
It's
You
the,
know, Pam and I attended one earlier this summer, and we kind of teased the awards, you know, the grants.
Oh, yeah.
And so that would be a nice update.
Okay.
They were
That's good.
interested.
I'll definitely mention that.
it's the first Wednesday of every month, I believe. It's
First Wednesday at 8 o'clock.
o'clock.
And I know Pam had a matrix about that, so maybe the next meeting she can get us back on schedule.
Great.
Because I did not go when I was scheduled to go. Anything else? Anybody? No? Okay, so we have a motion to adjourn.
Second?
We need to do our yes button back up there. Everybody in favor, yes. Okay.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We are adjourned.